Oh Lord,
No, you want to start out with that?
better not.
I think we should, man. I think we should come out of the gates just firing today.
Well, I think ultimately the bottom line of that is that when you've got it's creating biblical harmony, it's creating biblical alignment. That's all. In other words, it's not about, and that's the thing. I think that's the thing in this situation where, where you're talking to a, and this is the hard thing. And I think, man, I was telling somebody the other day, we were talking about that scripture that says that women adorn themselves with shamefacedness and sobriety. And I said that word shamefacedness actually comes from, I said it's an unfortunate translation of the Greek word into the King James, because there's no use of the word shamefaced in our, like, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
I actually only know what the English word in our King James Bible means, because I went back and studied the Greek word, which basically means that which is anchored in a deep sense of humility. So anchored in a deep sense of humility means that I defer to another. That's what humility does, preferring another above ourselves. Well, we're living in a world today of rugged individualism, and nobody's deferring to the other. Nobody is preferring their brother or sister. Nobody is living, I'm talking about in the world, right? That's like, I mean, and even when people are serving others, it's often to serve themselves. And so, in that situation, so shamefastness or fastened in a deep sense of humility. And then the word sobriety is, if a person doesn't have a deep sense of humility, at the very least, the fact that their use of the way they dress, if there's immodesty in the way that they dress, then there's a sobriety that causes them to understand that I could cause for a woman to say, I could cause a brother to stumble, which would affect his eternity. And I even hit on this last night about, I said, we live in a world today that's so anti that mindset. Basically says, you know what, I'm going to wear what I'm going to wear. And if you got a problem with it, it's your problem. It's not my problem. I don't, and I think that's the thing. The crazy thing about it is we live in such a world that's so whacked out sometimes to the biblical paradigm that people don't even, sometimes have a mindset that basically says, like Paul said, with meat offered to idols, he said, I've got liberty. Here's what's crazy. Paul said, I have liberty until it affects the conscience of my brother. That's where my liberty ends. Right?
Yeah.
I have liberty until it affects the conscience of my brother. And then my liberty ends. And
Right.
what he says, and if I affect the conscience of my brother, then I will not eat meat. So it's not a, in some ways, when you look at that scripture, say, wives submit to your husbands. That's not an ancient concept that has no relevance in our world today. It's a biblical alignment and harmony that's also seen in the scripture that says, submit yourselves one to another.
Right.
So,
right. Coming out of the gates gunning today, ain't you?
Well,
it's like the conversation we had with Dr. Johnston
yeah,
the day about how that a lot of times our positions. What was the word that he used? Cultured, but not cultured of like refined.
No, he said we're
in culture.
He said I think he said in the context of the conversation, he used the word culturefied.
Culturefied, right?
He said, I mean, whatever he said, however you want to look at it, we're still culturefied.
Right. Correct. And that, I think that applies here, where we try to the influences of culture affect, right, our biblical view and understanding.
Yeah. Need to get a new chair.
Man,
I need a new chair. You can't have a studio chair that sounds like that.
what in the world, bro? Okay, let me see here. There we go. Man, I always struggle trying to remember how to share it to multiple groups at the same time, but I figured it out. It just takes me a minute. So I'm getting there. Apostolic Impact, United Prayer. I don't think our nursery and toddler ministry needs that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give it to the Rock Church, our buddy Jeff Smith down in Clute, Texas. Let's see. Apostolic Preachers Forum, Church Planners, Indiana Bible College, Weekend Worship, Mentoring Young Leaders. Of course, Word Share.
What's word share? What is that? So people say, what is word share?
No, I was going to say describe Word Share in a few words, but
10
I'm not going
words
to
or
do
less.
that. Right? Exactly. Okay, we're getting a little late. Got a little time constraint today, so we're going to get rocking and rolling.
Let's go, man.
Reroll.
This is going to be a good
It's
one.
going to be good. It's going to be awesome. So appreciate people joining on here on a Thursday. So I'm just all messed up time-wise. So the one thing, man, I got to figure out something, bro.
What is it?
It's frustrating to me that this microphone stand,
Okay.
the arm is short. It's not like the Lord.
His
Ears
arm is
deaf
not
and his
short.
arm is short. It frustrates me. Okay, you ready to roll?
Man, listen, I will tell you this much.
Tell me.
If you're ready to roll, then I'm ready to roll.
Let's do this.
There's no doubt in my mind. Come on.
All right, here we go.
Wait, hold on.
I thought you were playing a little Phil Collins or something there.
What just happened? Oh my word. It just turn up the lights.
Turn up the lights. Wow.
Okay, that just Pandora just decided to start on its own. Okay.
You just need a little background music to get things rolling. What the world?
All right, here we go.
Wow. All right. Let's rock and roll. All right, here we go. Ready? Whew. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mobilized Church Podcast. This is Chris Dillingham alongside my big brother, Ken Dillingham Jr. the third. And the people listening to the podcast don't really care, but we're recording this on a Thursday because this week is July 4th. And so we took a little holiday, but man, this topic today's been burning. So we gotta get after it. So good to see you on a Thursday, Ken.
I think this is going to be amazing. It's good to see you. It's, is it rainy there?
It is.
Yeah.
You said that like Irish, getting a little Irish. This is a wee bit rainy there.
That's kind of weird. What was that all about? Is it rainy there?
Like, I didn't know who were listening. Conor McGregor is our guest today.
You said shenanigans and something.
That is awesome. A wee bit. There is a wee bit of rain.
It's a wee bit
of rain, and a little muggy out there, but we're doing good. We're doing good.
Awesome.
At least it's not, bro. We were in St. Louis, so we missed last week. We had an amazing time in St. Louis. Big time shout out to our man, Big Darren Sargent from Headquarters Ministry Central. He's big dog. He's an executive big dog.
Who was quick to let us know that he launched our podcast.
He did. It's that'll be on the video recording that he launched our podcast.
Yeah.
Because our first interview was with him when we were getting ready to launch our podcast. And so yeah, he's responsible for that. So we're down there in St. Louis, bro. I'm gonna tell you right now, being in St. Louis just reminded me of another reason of why I want to be saved. It was 9:00 at night. It was 91, felt like 95.
Yeah.
What?
At 9:00 at night. Sun was going down. I think it was 90. I think it was like 95 or 96 when I was getting coffee on Thursday morning. That was the day that it was slated to
Sounds like
be
a perfect time to get coffee.
I know, right? I was getting coffee. It's like, "It's not hot enough for you.
Right,
You wanna pour 110 degrees inside of you so that the 110 around you it's yeah, sinking me up inside and out."
right.
So, yeah, man, it was 103 there that day, which is like people are like, "It's 103," but there's a St. Louis 103 is kind of like
Mm.
it's like 123.
And it's not like in St. Louis, you can go to the ocean. Like, you can go to the muddy Mississippi and hang out a little bit, but
Oh, yuck.
yeah, we're dogging on St. Louis today. We're gonna get in a lot of trouble probably. So, but we did have a good time, and I
But
don't
here's the
know.
deal.
Yeah,
We only dog on St. Louis because it's the home of the Cardinals.
bro,
There's good people in St. Louis.
mostly.
Except no, there's good people in St. Louis. It's just that it's the home of the Cardinals, and it's like, ugh, man, feel sorry for them.
Yeah. So one of my favorite memes is a guy holding a sign, and of course, this I was joke and tease that this is a typical Cardinals fan. He's got like jean cutoff shorts and a tank top, and he
Mhm.
looks a little scraggly, and he's got a sign that says "Get a brain," and he meant to say moron, but he spelled it Morans, morans, and he's got a Cardinals hat on. Like, bro, it's perfect, man. It's so awesome. So
Get a brain, Morans.
I always tease that like Cardinal fans, they can go get season tickets to Cardinals and all year passes to the Bowling Hall of Fame, which is also in St. Louis. So the Bowling Hall of Fame.
Hey,
Oh man,
did you know if you Google "Get a brain, Morans,"
yeah,
what the first thing that comes up is "Get a brain, Morans guy."
there you go. Right? Do you see?
It says, "Get a Brain Morans" by Martha Rossler. The man in the photo carries two inelegantly hand-lettered signs. I love the word inelegantly. One of one of which says in large letters, "Get a brain, Morans," and the other, "Go USA."
That's awesome. That's awesome. And he happens to be wearing a Cardinals hat, which is just makes it
Bro,
glorious.
and a mullet with a
He's got a mullet.
mustache.
Bro, perfect St. Louis combo. I'm just trying to offend all the St. Louis people today. Just get them all. The mullet, the mustache, and the "Get a Brain Moran" sign. So, yeah, maybe we'll post that. Post
Hey,
that out there.
there's a guy, I think he's spoofing him.
Yeah.
There's another picture with a guy, and he's got almost like a USA bandana on with an Elvis outfit with some aviator sunglasses, and it looks like a fake mustache, and he's pointing like a '70s, like, Starsky and Hutch guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it says
Starsky and Hutch.
and
Good
it
good
says,
reference.
Get a brain, Morans."
That's awesome.
He's, like, spoofing the guy,
I need a t-shirt. I need to get a Brain Moran t-shirt. That's what I need to do.
and then put "Go Cardinals" underneath it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So big time shout out to all the Cardinal fans for for that. So all right. So you got some time constraints. We're gonna go. Let's go. Let's get
We're on.
this.
Hey,
This is gonna be so good today.
it's never been beyond us to stuff an hour's worth of material into 30 minutes.
Or 30
Or
minutes
to
material into an
drag out
hour.
30 minutes of material into an hour. We can do it
Right.
either way.
Absolutely. So we appreciate people hanging with us and being here on a Thursday. Got a good crew on Facebook Live. So appreciate that. Hit the share button, get the word out because this is going to be a good one. So today, Ken,
Mhm.
here's what we want to talk about. So we've been doing a conversation about the mission to different groups of people, right?
Right.
And so we had conversation about we started out with infectious Christianity. We talked about
Mhm.
the mission to highly humanistic people.
Mhm.
So I'm going to read just kind of what I wrote this morning, and then get that
Mhm.
kicked off to you and let you just roll with it. So just kind of praying about this, thinking about this morning. Here's kind of what hit me. We're living in a world that is filled with people that are exhausted and indifferent. Exhausted because the heaviness of the issues with which we're dealing, the constant barrage of news and information, and the spiritual turmoil most are unaware of. And indifferent because many view Christianity as ineffective at the least, complicit in causing the issues at the worst.
Hmm.
So today we're going to examine the characteristics of the kingdom of God that's called to operate in these conditions and how the church ultimately becomes viral, particularly to an exhausted and indifferent people. So let's jump
That's
into
good all
that.
by itself, by the
Let's
way.
let's jump into that. Talk to us about exhausted and indifferent people.
Man, I mean, your intro said it. It's I think, there's people that are exhausted in the sense that I don't know that my conversations are unique or the people that I talk to are unique. I figure, that it's almost like a cross section. Obviously, I know, that there's some level as a pastor. I guess I could say it like this: as a pastor, where sometimes you'd be limited to the scope of the people that sort of, people that work kind of where you work or in the same arena, or people who, sort of live or run in the same circles or whatever. And so there's some limitation there. But to get a good cross section of people, I think pastors have the ability to get a good cross section of people because they pastor a good cross section of people. And so
Right.
they talk to them, and they talk to people that are, that you run into contact with, and you're living on mission and so on. So the point that I'm making is that it's funny that as I have conversations with people, and I don't know if this would be your experience as well, but that it seems that when you're talking to people who, and we're all obviously here talking to about the mission.
Right.
So we're talking about people who don't go to church maybe, or that don't, maybe they don't spend time, spend a lot of time searching the scriptures or whatever. I think it is interesting to me that one of the things that I hear people say is that they just don't have the bandwidth. I'm just weary with the conversation. It's just, people are mean on Facebook and they're fighting with each other and they're just da da da. So I think there's where you have people that are sort of weary with it. They're
Yeah.
just,
Sure.
and then of course, I think there's an element of indifference that results from it that says, this isn't blessing me. This isn't helping me. So it's funny when you mentioned that there are some people that say that the church is a contributor to some of the problem, or that
Right.
church people or whatever. And I think one of the reasons is because in culture wars, you got to have people that have a particular position in culture and have people who have an opposing position. And
Right.
anytime you have a scenario where you got one group on one side and one group on the other side, you have hostility between that. There's hostility, and so the level to which people feel what in other words, what they, because I've often said convictions is how deeply you feel what you believe,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
Sure.
so the deeper that you feel what you believe, if you're talking, Chris, if you talk about, my wife and I've been doing juicing this week, and so she's got this 7-day deal we're doing,
Nice.
and
Nice.
so today ours was it was called green ginger ale, and it
Ooh.
was, yeah, it was celery. It was
Kale.
celery, kale, apples, lime, and ginger. And so anyway, yesterday was like carrots and oranges and whatever. So we're doing this deal. So if you ask me, so what compare today's juice with yesterday's juice? I'll be
Mm.
like, there was yesterday's was orange. It was a little sweeter. Today was a little bitey because it had the ginger and whatever. And I'll just discuss it and whatever, and we go on. I don't, it's not like I have some deep held
Yeah. Right.
feeling about it or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
So I think when people start talking about the world and, like you have the world, you have the church, and there's vehemence in it sometimes. And so when there are people that would otherwise be interested, I think what ends up happening is they become indifferent because they just simply go, look, God, they're screaming this and you're screaming that, and they're screaming at each other, and
Right.
whatever.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's that's a that's a great point. And we live in such an emotional world.
mhm.
Right. I mean, everything is really emotion based, right? So, Ben Shapiro's famous saying of, um, facts don't care about your feelings. I mean, bro, you see some of the videos and some of the things that are happening at like some of the gay pride parades and some of those kinds of things, like just this, I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? It starts with a V. Not vitriolic, but like this really strong emotion,
Yeah.
right? And so that makes it so much more difficult. And here's the truth about it, right? Part of the reason why we have an exhausted people is because living on emotion is exhausting. You only have so much emotional bandwidth,
That's so true, man.
right? And so, I mean, man, think about it. Think about, like, okay, think from a church perspective. You go to church and you have one of those services where, man, just the conviction of the Lord is moving, right?
Mhm.
And you go into prayer and like there's weeping and you're crying and whatever. Like, bro, it's draining.
So true,
It's so
man.
draining. And we live in a world where so many people are living on emotion. And
Mhm.
bro, I don't want to sound like grumpy old man, but a lot of the things that we're watching and viewing, movies or whatever, are all geared towards emotion
Mhm.
because they are women. So you have a group of people that are living on emotion,
Mhm.
which creates kind of this exhaustion. So now they don't have the energy, they don't have the capacity to deal with it,
That's a great point, man.
right?
Mhm.
A add into that people that are blinded and just don't know. There is there is an adversary.
Mhm.
There is a spiritual atmosphere. There's a spiritual environment. Things are happening, and man, the Lord's really been dealing with me this week. I preached Sunday about, the Bible says we're not ignorant of his devices.
Mhm.
And the Lord just kind of walked me through some things. I won't re-preach the whole thing, but in essence, what does the enemy do? He identifies and attempts to exploit vulnerabilities in us.
Mhm.
It's not
Mhm.
hooky spooky. It's not Nightmare on
Yeah,
Elm Street. It's not
right.
all that kind of stuff. Frank Peretti, all this.
That's it. That's why I
There's
said that's the caricatured version of spiritual warfare that the devil wants you to believe. The reality is it's way more subtle and insidious than that.
subtle, absolutely, man. So I think a lot of people don't recognize, they don't understand that the spiritual climate, the spiritual atmosphere, it's draining. There's
Mhm.
just this constant pressure. Then you add into that, bro. Then you add into that 24/7, 365. Here's the reality. I was thinking about this morning. Bad things have always happened. There have always been wars. There have always been dictators. There have always been famines. There's always been all these things that are happening. But no generation ever has had wall-to-wall access 24/7 to the calamities of life happening around the world,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
If there's something, even 50 years ago, 75 years ago, if something happened, you know, 3,000 miles away, you're
That's
not
true.
gonna know about it in real time.
That's so true.
But right now, you have news stations that do breaking news because there's, like, a major car accident.
Bro, weather.
Weather.
Like the weather, like I was thinking about this yesterday. I was thinking about like entertainment, like how television has become like probably, I don't know if I could, if I've ever seen any data or stats on this, but it seems to me like somehow that there's that the number one form of revenue in America is the revenue generated from entertainment.
Yeah.
I would say, like, and
Yeah.
I
Oh,
would say
man. Oh,
and I would say specifically,
generally
like
speaking, yeah.
in-home television and movies.
Yeah.
And because of advertising dollars that are spent, the dollars that are, all of those kinds of things. I don't know, outside of other kinds of commerce. My point is, if that's the case, then all of these, like even weather shows, like weather stations. How could weather stations have a 24/7 weather station? What are you going to talk about for 24/7 unless you make weather a story?
Bro, hype up every single, like, tornado that happens
Yeah.
becomes like this major, 12-hour event. Like, oh, tornadoes coming, bad weather's coming, storms are coming. Every single snowstorm is snowmageddon. Every one of
So
them is Snowmageddon every time.
unbelievable. I actually I saw something like on this like yesterday or whatever, and they were just doing all this, and it was like an ad, and it was all these clips, and it was a tornado, and it was like lightning and thunder, and it was like blah, it's coming, and it was like this, and I thought to myself, I thought, God have mercy, like, can we just go back to 1973 and just the weather hits and like you look outside and it's like, oh man, it looks like it's going to rain. Can't we just go back to like 1973 and there's a news report and they just do a 5-minute spot in the news on weather, and then you go on, and you know what I'm saying? And people just
Right.
experienced weather. And when the snow came, they dug out and they went on. And but like you just said, whether it's, and it's just the one little microcosm that shows you that it creates emotional energy in people. And I think sometimes they don't even know. And so that's the world we're living in. So then the church, so the question today, I think, really needs to
Yeah.
be, how does the church do mission to weary and indifferent people? Right. I mean,
Yeah.
where would you start that conversation with?
Well,
I'm not talking about with lost people, but where would you start that conversation with the church to say, because I think a point that you made is so valid. And that is that you look at it and you go, as a Christian, as a strong believer in the Bible and God, sometimes it makes me angry. And it just makes me angry just because of the fact that it's like, it's legal to shove it up our nose. It's legal to, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's
yeah.
illegal to say, I saw one of those, I saw a gay pride parade, and like somebody's walking along with a sign and said, it's one sign said, Jesus is queer. And one side says, one side said, Jesus was a, Jesus was gay, or something, like it was like Jesus was an unmarried single man who lived with men. Like they were basically trying to say like Jesus was queer, he was gay, he was,
Right. Right.
so my point was, and I was looking at that going, why are you walking with a sign that points out Jesus?
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right. Absolutely. Well, so I go like I think we should go after the first part of that with the exhausted piece.
Right.
Like how do we, as the church, the reason we're having this conversation, because I do think it's important to understand where people are coming from, understand why they are, why they're living the way they're living, why they're
Yeah.
experiencing what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
And I think just a basic understanding that says, look, a lot of what's going on is that people are tired. People are they're just flat out weary with the world. And what happens is, I mean, people react and respond to weariness and to being,
Mm-hmm.
tired differently.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just check out.
Yeah. A lot of people can disengage.
And so that goes into the indifferent piece, which we'll talk about here in just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Some people get grouchy.
Yeah.
They get irritable, hard to get along with, and
And
whatever.
maybe don't even know why,
Right. And
because it's
so
coming from so many different places.
correct. So, as a disciple maker, a lot of times, what we talk about is fruit to root. A lot of times what happens is, as believers, is we chase the fruit. And the fruit in this case would be if somebody is frustrated all the time and just grouchy, hard to get along with. A lot of times it's because they're just weary,
Mm-hmm.
and if chasing that frustration is not going to get to it. So I think there's a couple things I would throw out, Ken. Number one, first of all, this is why we say in order to make disciples, you have to first be the disciple of
Mm-hmm.
Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the question: as followers of Jesus, are we living differently than what the world is experiencing?
This
Or
critical question right there.
or are we just as weary as they are?
So here's something interesting, Chris. So let me just tag right in where you're at right there.
Yeah.
So I'm writing a note right here as you were talking. The institutional church is always discussing how to frame its message
Yeah.
to to its audience or
To
to the
tailor it.
consumer.
Right. Right.
Trying to tailor it's like the institutional church is always saying, okay, so here's what's interesting, because I want to hit this before, because we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of the conversation here in just a moment. But I think what you just said is so powerful, because I think if you're coming from an institutional church perspective, and I want to make a dividing line,
Yeah.
is to say, if you're a part of the institutional church and you're thinking, okay, well then how do we craft our message in
That's a
2023
great point.
to
Bro, that's a
weary
great point.
people, whatever. I think if you're talking about a disciple making culture, then you look at it and say, we're not crafting a message, we are the message.
We are the message.
So when you just said,
So
are
good,
we
bro.
living any differently? Here's what's so funny. The institutional church basically says, our message can basically be detached from the lives of the people that are communicating the message. In other words, you could have a bunch of people that are weary, you could have a bunch of people that are angry, you could have a bunch of people that are discouraged and whatever,
Yeah.
but you could still be trying to pull for church growth and say, we're just going to do this amazing church service and we're going to do all this stuff. People come in, they experience the Sunday experience, and it's like, we got to figure out, how do we really communicate this message to a world that's weary and indifferent. And I
That's
think that
so good,
what
man.
you just said was that because we were talking about it, if you want to make disciples, you have to first be the disciple. And so for a disciple making culture, what we say is, you have to first experience the rest and the peace of God, so that out of your life, there is a walking invitation to someone around you that says, I want what you've got.
Are you living an exceptional life? Are you living a
Yes.
questionable life? Right?
Yes.
Michael
Right.
Frost. Are people looking at you in a world as believers? We face the same thing. Same things. We face spiritual conflict. We face 24/7 wall-to-wall coverage. We face the emotional issues of the hour. Like we deal with all of that. But there ought to be something different about followers of Jesus. We're epistles written by God, read of men, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so our lives there should be something conveying to our world, not that God ends or limits the chaotic world that we're living in, but in the midst of the storm, God brings peace to his believers. Are
Mm-hmm.
we living questionable lives? And I love what you said, because it's so good, man. It's like a PR firm trying to craft, it's kind of like the Bud Light situation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
think that they're going to appeal, and what ends up happening is when you try to craft a PR message, you're always going to miss the mark on somebody. You can't
Right.
do that. You're never going to hit that. We have to be the message.
So good.
And the Bible says, this is the wet rest wherein the weary shall find rest for their souls. If we're not living lives that evoke a question from people to say, what is it about you that you have this peace? What is it about you that you're not caught up in the
Mm-hmm.
chaos and the
Mm-hmm.
turmoil of the world? And here's the other thing, Ken, you mentioned about institutional church. Is it possible that the institutional church is actually in many ways
Hmm.
contributing to the weariness of God's people?
Right.
Because in order to keep the machine going, you've gotta have
Oh,
volunteers.
you fitting to go there.
I'm gonna go there. Let's right? You've gotta make the machine go. So, man, we've gotta make sure we have all kinds of volunteers and, you know, I won't mention, but I was listening to a podcast about a particular church, and it was all built around, like, they built this whole system of basically forced labor of volunteers because it needed so many people to
Yeah.
make the machine run, right?
Yeah. Not in America, in a church that everybody knows and they make music.
Correct.
Yeah. Right.
Correct.
Right.
So the question then becomes, are we living a life that's showing people in our world today that the Jesus way is the better way of living?
Mm. See, that there it is. And that's so, oh, that's it. Right. The reality is that the the world that wants okay, back up. Go back 30 years ago.
Yeah.
The world, quote unquote, the world, people who were lost or whatever, had some Christian memory. And so So the message that the church communicated 40 years ago, whatever, was the message that it would appeal to people to say, our church is a different kind of church, or it's a whatever. And it's assuming that people are wanting a better church. Like, I would go if I could find a church that, whatever. We've talked about this recently. We talked about this in this very conversation. People that are hostile, that have antipathy toward Christianity.
Yeah, right.
I think what happens is that if the world is saying to the church, look, I don't want what you're selling.
Yeah.
If that's their mentality, right? If the mentality is, I don't want what you're selling, then it doesn't matter how you frame it. It doesn't matter how hard your people work. It doesn't matter how much they volunteer. It doesn't matter how good your Sunday gathering is, because what happens is you're having a diminishing subsection of people that might be your potentially, right, your market base.
Sure.
But everybody is experiencing this exhaustion. Everybody is experiencing this thing. And that's why when Jesus came into the world, the Bible said, he shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. It says, and of the increase of his government and peace, there will be no end. What's amazing is that the word shalom in the Bible, in the Hebrew, in the Old Testament, the word shalom didn't just simply mean the absence of conflict. In fact, Jesus said, I haven't come to remove conflict. I haven't come to give you a peace that is the absence of conflict. How did he say it? He says, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives. How does the world give peace? The world gives peace by removing the conflict. He said, but I'm going to send you out as sheep among wolves. And what I'm going to do is when I sit on the throne of something, I govern in peace. And that word peace is not lack of conflict. It is wholeness and completeness. The Hebrews used to say shalom is everything as it ought to be. So wherever Jesus is ruling and reigning, things are going to be as they ought to be. So what's crazy is like, so when we read in the New Testament, let the peace of God rule in your hearts.
Yeah.
If the peace of God is ruling in your hearts, conflict and chaos can be ruling around you.
Yeah.
But if the peace of God is ruling in your heart, then you don't need peace by saying, like, man, I need to just check out, man. I just need to get away from all this stuff, man.
Just getting ready to say that. I need a vacation. No, it's good. That's exactly, that's the mindset of, if I can just get away from this, then I'll be at peace, and then I'll have but there is no escape. Life happens no matter where you are. You're never going to get away from it. And that's why that shalom piece, man, is so good, bro.
And what's interesting, Chris, is Jesus himself connects it to the mission.
Yeah.
In Luke chapter 10, Jesus said, I want you to go to the communities, and I want you to inquire who's noble, and I want you to go to them, and I want you to talk to them. And he says, speak your peace over them. And if your peace stays there, which is let's be honest, that's a scripture that we go, I don't even know what that means. Like, most people are like, I don't even know what that means. Speak your peace over them.
Right.
He says, speak the peace of the kingdom to them. You're declaring the peace of the kingdom to them. And if your peace settles there. So we think, well, you're going in peace. Like like, we come in peace. Whatever. I don't.
That's pretty good.
You know what I mean? I don't know. And so I was trying to do some kind of like an alien UFO symbol.
I know the people that are listening have no idea, but that was pretty good. They need to go watch it.
We'll do So anyway,
I think that's the Illuminati you're doing there.
That would have been that. But the thing about it is what's funny is that when we look at that, if you think of that in the Hebrew imagination, when Jesus said, you go and you speak the peace of the kingdom, the shalom of the kingdom, that is going in and saying the Messiah has come, and he's come to make things as it ought to be.
Man, and we're
here to bring in the peace reign of the Messiah. And if those people go, we want the peace reign of the Messiah, the king that rules in peace, of the increase of his government and peace, we want the peace reign of the Messiah here. He said, then stay there with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, going to the mission piece, I think Gary Gauthier nailed it, that the mission that we're called to is to not just invite people to church,
Right.
but to invite people into the rest of Jesus, right? He said, "Come unto me, all that are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I
Yeah.
will give you the rest that you're looking for."
Mhm.
And so, truthfully, bro, really, this is a divine setup.
Mhm.
This
Right.
is a divine setup because Jesus specifically says, "I am offering a place, not physical place, but a place of life, a way of life
Mhm.
that is a respite from the chaos of the world that brings exhaustion. If you'll come unto me," actually, last night in prayer, I'll just share something, just personal stories, tell the story. Like
Mhm.
in prayer, I was praying, just, Lord, sometimes it just gets heavy. And I
Mhm.
felt the Lord impress on me, if it's getting heavy for you, what does that mean? And
Means did Jesus go fruit to root on you, bro?
for real. And I'm like, it means that I'm trying to carry it, because you said that if I'll take your yoke, it'll
That's
be
right.
light, and it'll
And
be easy,
my
because
burden is light, my yoke is easy. Right. Right.
you're carrying the load. And so, just as a reminder to me, that as a believer, it's oftentimes it's me trying to carry the load. It's me trying to carry everything, make everything happen, is when it gets heavy. And what I got to do is lean back into him. I believe God has set us up in this hour that there are people every single day that we come in contact with that are absolutely just beyond tired, just dragging, all the memes about, I need my cup of coffee, and I need, whatever. I need a vacation. I need this, just flat out worn out and weary with the pressures and troubles and trials and difficulties of life. And as spirit-filled believers, if we'll let the shalom of Jesus reign in our lives, right? Everything in its place, everything as it ought to be. If we allow the shalom of Jesus to reign
That's
in
it.
our lives, then now we
That's it,
can
dude.
say to people, not just, "Hey, here's the truth. If you want peace, this is what you need to do. This, and this." Now we can go to people and say, "Man, I feel you. I know exactly what you're talking about. But I'll tell you where my peace comes from." And Jesus gives you an invitation to experience this
Mhm.
as well. Come into that peace, experience that shalom, experience everything as it ought to be.
Man, that's it right there. Because that's the compelling message. The compelling message is that we're living in a world today, and and here's the thing. I have a tendency to be an ought defender, right?
Yeah,
Like I have a tendency to be a truth guy. I have a tendency to be like, hey, this is let's go to the word and let's, whatever.
sure.
And that's the foundation of it all, right? We don't deny that. But the problem is that if I think that the best way that I'll ever do the mission is how good do I become at defending the ought, which in some ways is apologetics, right? If I can think of the best way to defend the ought, then I will become very successful in the mission. When the reality is what Jesus says is, no, actually, as the last days approach, men will be lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. So what that means is there's not going to be a natural inclination to be able to talk about the things of God with them, to say to have that discussion about the way things ought to be, because that'll just be a conflict or the conversation in the conflict of ideologies.
Yeah,
But everybody is seeking shalom. Everybody is seeking that peace that comes from, well, not, they don't know that it comes from God, but they're seeking that peace. Like they may have $5 million in the bank, and they don't know why can't I have peace? I've got everything I want. I've got money. You know, you
sure.
have somebody saying my money in the bank right now is making more money than my annual income, or whatever. And yet I still, I'm scared I'm gonna lose that money, or or I've got, and so people, it doesn't matter where they're at in life, everybody, whether it's relationship issues, whether it's with their, parenting, whether it's, job insecurity, whether it's what's going on in the world, everybody is saying, man, I'm just, this is just nuts.
Yeah.
And when they find somebody who's walking and living in the reign of peace of the King of Peace, who's the King of Salem, that's the King of Shalom,
Right.
right? And right. So the thing about it is that we have to realize that if the King of Peace is ruling in our heart, right?
Yeah.
If the King of Peace is ruling in our heart, then what happens is that it's not something we experience or something we do. It's a fruit of the Spirit, right?
Yeah.
The peace is a fruit of the Spirit. And so it's something we become. We actually become peace. Peace becomes what we are,
Yeah.
right?
So
Jesus
good.
was our peace, the Bible said. And what's interesting is there's cultural ramification of this. I don't want to open a whole nother can of worms, but there's cultural ramification to this, because the Bible says that he made peace in Christ. God made peace with us, which means that there was peace in our relationship with God, and he tore down the middle wall of partition between us so that we can have peace with God and peace with each other. And so the kingdom shalom that Jesus came to bring in this world is something that basically answers the problem of the heart and sociological issues.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and so I know we gotta wrap it up
Yeah.
here, because I know you got a hard
Yeah.
stop here.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just mention real quick, the end times. One of the signs of the end times is people are going to cry, what?
Yeah. Peace.
Peace, peace, peace.
Right.
The world is desperately seeking peace, and they think peace is going to come from governmental, agreements, peace treaties, all that kind of stuff.
And their hearts will fail them for fear.
And their hearts will fail them for fear. Right. So they're gonna miss that. Only the peace of God can satisfy. I do want to mention just real quick, Ken, the
Yes.
other piece of this, and I don't want to shortchange it, but I would just quick mention
Mm-hmm.
the indifferent piece of this.
Mm-hmm.
The conversation about exhausted and indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that one of the challenges we face in our world is that there are a group of people that look at religion in general
Mm-hmm.
as, again, at the very least, powerless.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And if it makes you feel better, then fine, good for you. But and they don't, like for us as believers, it's on our mind. We're thinking about it all the time. But the truth is, people that don't know, like I'm not thinking about, I don't know, like I'm not thinking about the orchestra every day because I don't play an instrument.
True.
And so people aren't thinking about this stuff, and so they become indifferent because they don't see any influence, any effect, and they see no difference, right? So they become indifferent today, or in our world today. And so the second piece of that is part of the indifference is birthed out of they see Christianity in particular, not
Mm-hmm.
most. They say religion, but the reality is most of the vitriol is aimed towards Jesus. It's aimed towards Christianity, but they become indifferent because Christianity's what's caused the problems. I don't want to connect with that. It's judgmental, it's hateful, whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
they just kind of become indifferent at it. So the appeal to an indifferent people has to be, again, showing them that Jesus is the better way.
Yep.
This is why our lives are the example, bottom line.
So good. So good. I'll end with this. I think tagging on to what you just said, if peace is a circumstance, we will tend to find the people and the situations that help bring us peace.
Sure.
If peace is a condition, then we will be able to go into peaceless scenarios.
Right.
The more that Christians become like the world, except that they believe differently, In other words, they get their peace the same way. I just have to find people that agree with me. And when people don't agree with me, then bless God, I'm not, chunk them. And so you got to, so
Right.
if peace is circumstantial, then we will tend to the echo chamber. If peace is circumstantial, we will tend to turning our church into a closed, cloistered safe haven. If peace is a condition of our soul, then we will tend to go to people who need peace on mission. And so, like you just said, the indifference is if all you have is an ideology, but the condition of your heart is no different than theirs. It's you're just as angry as they are. They believe that, you believe that. There's no difference. Why would I choose that? If there is a transformational thing in us, if there's a transformational thing in our lives,
Yeah.
and we have the power of God and there's
Yeah.
miracle signs and wonders, then the world is going to say, now, wait a minute, that's a different type of Christianity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, man, great conversation today. A lot of great comments. We were in a little bit of a time crunch, but got most of it in today. So we appreciate everybody flexing with us on the schedule
Yeah,
and
yeah,
being
yeah.
here on a Thursday. We had a great group on Facebook Live, and appreciate that. So we look forward. We're going to be back next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Yeah, we're good next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, because camp doesn't start till Wednesday, so we're good. We'll be back next Tuesday, probably around 10
Yeah.
ish.
Maybe a little early because I got to take the fifth wheel over to camp.
Oh yeah, so we'll let people know. We'll get the word out. So we look forward to coming back to you next week with another exciting episode. You look thrilled, bro. Another exciting episode of the Mobilized Church
Let's go.
podcast. We'll see you next week. Until then,